If you've ever thought, I would love to pivot my career, but I'm too far in, I'm too old, I'm behind, I don't have enough experience, then this episode is for you. Today, I'm sitting down with my past client, Marika, who pivoted her career multiple times from military to caregiving for her husband while he was going through cancer to running her own coaching business and then deciding, I want to pivot fully into HR. And then she was able to do that through my HR Star program within weeks, not months or years, like it takes so many others to crack the code on pivoting their careers. She did not have the perfect titles or the linear path. And she was not in a job market where people were landing roles simply. She was actually being told by her friends and family and many others that it would take her 9 months to land anything, let alone her dream job. In this episode, we break down exactly how she pivoted to an HR business partner role, how she transitioned her non-traditional experience into the language that recruiters were looking for, and the mindset shifts that came with the job search along the way. So if you're sitting here and wondering, can I really start a new chapter now? You need to hear this story. Let's dive in. P.S. My signature HR Star coaching program that Marika used to land her next HR role is open for enrollment for the next couple of days. The link is in the show notes where you can save your seat with thousands of dollars in bonuses when you join now. All of the details are below, and I cannot wait for you to hear this episode. Let's dive in. Hey, it's Irina Pozan, and welcome back to the Career Cravings Podcast. This podcast has a simple mission. It's to help ambitious professionals like you build the career and life that you've been craving. Over the past 15 years, I've worked as an HR leader, designed hiring systems, led recruitment teams, and I've sat on the other side of the hiring table. I've seen what works in today's job market, what doesn't, and what separates those good candidates from the ones that actually land their dream roles. Now I'm bringing everything I've learned straight to you. Each episode is packed with actionable insights and tools to help you land your dream role sooner. Now let's dive in. All right, Marika, thank you so much for joining me today on the Career Cravings Podcast. I know you're a podcaster yourself, so super excited for our conversation today. And your journey really stood out for me in terms of everything that you have been through, which we're going to dive into in a moment, in your personal life, the way that you have advocated and helped others as well, and just your journey in your job search and finding the role that you are in today. I know there were lots of takeaways and mindset shifts, so excited to dive in. I would love to just start with a little intro about who you are.
So I am now an HR business partner working for a fabulous organization, and I have an amazing team and coworkers. So that is where I am now, where I found your podcast was the first thing. So a little bit about my journey, and I know we're going to talk about this more, but I was both coaching and in an HR role, kind of doing both part-time. And I had decided I wanted to go full-time in an HR role, and I wasn't able to do that with the company that I was working for at the time. So I'm as a podcaster myself, I love podcasts. I get a lot of information from podcasts. And so I, of course, got on and started looking at career podcasts, career transition podcasts. I wasn't really sure what I was looking for. But I, of course, found yours. And I think it was not too long after you had just started. And I had listened to a couple of different podcasts, and I liked yours instantly. And I never even touched the other ones. So, and partly because you spoke really succinctly to, I think, the issues that we struggle with when we're looking for a job, and also just really practical advice. And so that is really how I found out about you, was through your podcast.
I love that so much. And I know I do the same thing. Like if I am in the car and I'm alone, as long as I'm alone, I'm always listening to something. And right now I'm diving into like every podcast there is about writing a book, because that's the stage I'm in. And I'm like, I've never done this before. How am I supposed to figure this out? How would I know how to do this? And then I'm like diving in. And then of course, from time to time, like different ones, but I go deep too. I'm like, okay, this is the topic. Let's listen to everything there is on this topic.
Yes.
And please plug your podcast. Tell us more about what that was about and what it's called so people can find it as
Yeah.
well.
So my podcast, so I have been for the last 5 years, a coach for people who are supporting a partner with cancer. And that was my story. I was in a very different career field and my husband was diagnosed with cancer. The age I was 40, he was a little bit older than me. And we had a young child. And for most people who have any experience with cancer, it always hits you, out of the blue, and it's a major life transition and upset and kind of adjustment. And so through that process of really his battle with cancer, which lasted about 5 years, he did pass away. He ended up having multiple cancers, and we went through a lot in that period of time. We also found we were looking for some emotional support, really, I think, in that process. And we found a coaching program that was truly transitional and life-changing for both of us. For him, it helped him really cope with how the parts of the disease where he felt so out of control and in his life and in his body. And for me to be in this situation, with my partner, father of my child, coping with this disease that again had just impacted our life in such a huge way. And you feel there's so many parts of it that you can feel so powerless. And through this coaching program, we really learned how to find where we did have control. So fast forward, when he passed away, I had found that I loved the power that coaching had. And I wanted to help people who were in a similar situation that I was, who were also caregivers for their spouse. There are lots of people who support caregivers in general, lots of aging parents, and that's obviously a big need in our society. So my focus was really on the spousal relationship in coaching because it is a little different.
Yes.
You're equal partners, and then that can drastically change overnight for many people. And how do you adjust? How does it impact your relationship? What roles do you pick up that they once did? And just the emotional aspect of, I might lose this person. I don't know what the future holds. We had our whole life planned, and now that's all up in the air. And all of those adjustments you go through, that is what I helped people with in my coaching program. And the podcast, which I started doing about a little over a year ago, is called In This Together, Building Resilience When Caring for Your Partner. So you can find it on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on all the other podcast places. So I am not currently recording any new episodes, but I probably will actually add to some episodes because I've just, this is experience I have not only lived myself, but coached many, many people through. There are things that you can do, and there are ways that you can really both kind of from a practical standpoint and a mindset standpoint. There are really some things that you can do to build your strength and resilience in the process, in what is a very challenging process.
Yes. I mean, it's most people's biggest fear. It was my biggest fear to be diagnosed with cancer, and then it happens. And I can't imagine what it would be like to support a spouse during that time. And I know the first time we ever met and we were on our one-on-one and you shared with me what you've gone through. And I was just blown away by the fact that I believe there's like two types of people. There's people that will go through something very, very challenging like this. And most of the time, I mean, it can break you as an individual, right?
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, you were seeking support. You were looking to improve, to learn, to connect. And the coaching worked so well for you. And then you wanted to help others do the same, which is so beautiful. So instead of letting it break you, you leaned into the resiliency and like, how can I give back? How can I help others who are going through this challenging thing?
Yeah.
And I love that. It's just so beautiful. And I remember as soon as I learned I was cancer free, that was kind of what I wanted to do. And I didn't know what it looked like, but I'm like, maybe I write a book to help people stay optimistic while going through cancer, or like because I was trying to think of what were the resources I needed. And like, there aren't that many, right?
Yeah.
And it's so challenging. So I love that you do that. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it's powerful to have examples.
Yes.
people who've walked the path and show that you can get through this, and from both sides, right? And I think it's really important that you brought up it can break you. I have seen that happen for
Yes.
people on both sides, right? As caregivers, they tend to burn out and literally
Yes.
sometimes they can get sick themselves with just,
Stress. Yeah.
and, obviously the person, facing this diagnosis, I mean, the stress and the strain and there's the challenge that presents can really, really impact you. So
Yeah.
how we respond when faced with those challenges does mean everything, and having an example, whether it's from a book or a podcast, is so helpful. I mean, it was for me, and there's lots of great resources out there, but often, your story will speak to someone in a unique
Yes.
way. And I think that's incredible.
Absolutely. I'll also link Marika's information in case you want to go in the show notes and just drop her an email if you're facing anything that is also challenging, or if you have a spouse that's going through cancer or anything. I know this will touch so many people. And I totally get you taking a pause right now in this next chapter, as I mean, you had a goal to go full time into HR. And you have had multiple career paths. You've ran a business, you are a coach, and you've had a career before HR as well. So there's so much that happened, and you got clear on your goal of getting into an HR role full time. And that's when we connected. Walk me through what was the point where you were like, okay, this is what I want to do? And also, how did you know you wanted support with the job search process?
So when I decided I wanted to go full time, I first reached out to the organization I was working for. And unfortunately, they were and they have since, downsizing. So the timing really wasn't great, which was a
It's
bummer.
a theme.
And I was going to get laid off, actually. I was an additional HR support. And they let me know that, they restricted or they reduced my hours, and then I was going to get laid off. So I started looking full time. And that's when I started, found your podcast. And I knew about your program. I think I did watch a webinar, but I made the decision pretty quickly to join. Probably quicker than a lot of people, because one, I believe in the power of coaching and support. As a coach myself, I know how transformational it can be. So I didn't really need a whole lot of kind of convincing once I found the person that I believed in, and that was you and your programs. And I think the fact that you had brought so many people on, so many success stories on your podcast was really helpful. I mean, because there are people in all different stages, and I was more of a career transition. HR is a career transition field for me. To know that I could successfully transition into this career field was really helpful. So I did make the decision pretty quickly to join the program. And the biggest reason, and I will tell you, I was not financially in a position to do that. I mean, I put it on a credit card. I will tell you that. And I had you take a gamble. You do. And some people maybe, I'm not suggesting everybody makes those choices on their own, but I want to share that it was not like this was extra money I had just laying around. A few of us have that. But I also knew, here was the argument for me that really was important, is I could take 9 months and do this on my own, or I could get support and do it much quicker. And spoiler alert, it happened even quicker than I expected. But that was the biggest thing. I didn't want to be job searching for 8 to 9 months.
Yes.
Knew from just friends. I actually have a friend who she's just coming back into the workforce after being a mom. No change in her field or anything. She didn't have anything complicated. She's just kind of re-entering the workforce after being away for a while. And it took her 8 to 9 months to find a job.
That is today's reality. And for for pivoters, for people pivoting slightly or doing something even micro, different than what you used to do in your last job title, it often takes much longer and it's much more challenging, because in today's environment, people have options and they could just hire someone that has the business partner title already, right? Which is less of a risk for them, right? So I never know how these things are going to go, but I knew as soon as I met you, I'm like, oh my God, she's amazing. I hope this really works out quickly. And there was that spoiler. So yes, it did. But tell me more about what happened next.
Yeah. So the program is fantastic. And I will say that it is very thorough too. That's the other thing about your program that I really appreciate. There's work involved. Like, don't think you're not going to do work. You need to do the work, and the work is important. And it's part of what I think builds your confidence in the process. That was
Yes.
really one thing that made a difference for me, is going through the process, and especially, I mean, every process from the resume rewriting, which just gave me confidence in that resume. And I love the fact that, the advice is out there all the time. You will hear, cater your resume, because you can use AI now for every single job. But you end up with this, like, who am I after
You
that
lose
point? Like,
something. Yes.
you're just a chameleon trying to mold yourself to the job. And that is a horrible place to be mentally. So it is it's much more powerful to just really kind of sink into, this is who I am and these are the strengths I bring, and trust that will kind of, with the right, not the right, but with like a solid resume and process, trust that that's enough,
It is
and that's
enough. And it often works better, right? So I love that. So let's pause this for folks that are listening. They're like, what do you mean? So most people are applying, like you said, with changing their resume for each and every application.
Yeah.
But then when I ask, how's that going for you? They often say, well, it's not working, which is why we're having this conversation today. So what you end up with, to your point, is this Frankenstein sort of version, which is just adapting to what people want to hear, and it's often obvious because you can't take too much time to adapt it either. Even with AI, it's often obvious what you're trying to do there with that resume to the person opening and receiving it. And often then we also will get the imposter syndrome, because then we feel like, well, that's not truly me. Like, I'm just sending out something that's just a good AI match. And then that leads to poor interviewing and not really knowing what you bring to the table. So there's really the way that I love, and the way that we redid your resume and everyone that goes through my program, is based on two things. The first one is true reflection. And there is work involved in that, right? Like, it wasn't like, oh, here's your new resume. There it is. It's like you took 2 hours to reflect on who you are, considering your target role, what you bring to the table based on that. And there were decisions to make, like, how do we describe your past experience? How do we describe the fact that you were a CEO? How do we not make that intimidating for people when they consider hiring you? So there's two things. There's the reflection, which comes from you. Only you can do that deep work because only you know what you've done, from the leadership experience that you had from the military, like all of these different things. How do you describe that in that way that aligns with a business partner role? And it's always keeping in mind the target role, right? Because if you were targeting something else, your resume would look totally different. And if you do those two things well, you don't need other resumes.
And trusting, and I think being in the program and allowed me to trust that process. That I think is the other big benefit of being in the program, is we spend so much time doubting. And in the job application process, oh my gosh, it is so easy to get discouraged and just doubt. Am I even, is anybody going to hire me? Am I even qualified for this job? I mean, we can just fill our minds with doubt. That's a human condition, right? We can easily doubt ourselves. And then when you're in this time of life where you're looking for a job and looking for someone to, sanction you, it is very easy to fall into that. And so I think being in the program allowed me to remove that time that I would have wasted just doubting, is my resume good enough? Am I doing the right thing? Am I spending my time? All those questions that we have, like, I was just like, I'm just going to follow the process and trust it,
Well, then you're the best student because you trust and you're like, yes, okay, let's do this. I'm in. Like,
Yes,
let's try it your way first.
And that saves time, and it mostly saves emotional energy as well. But yeah, to your point, then I think that process, one of the things I think that I found, again, as a pivoter of coming from slightly different background, and pivoting into HR, it helped me see the skills that I did have in HR language.
Yes.
And it's been really helpful. I mean, the job I'm in now as an HR business partner, all of my experience, even though I haven't had this title before,
Mm.
still comes to bear and has been super helpful. And I'm loving my job and feeling very capable in it as well.
I love
I've got
that.
tons to learn, but I also know I can totally handle this. And that's because of my past experience.
And it takes you to believe that first, right? Before you can ever translate it to a resume or translate it in an interview to essentially, I don't like the word convince, but really you're trying to prove or convince in an interview that you are qualified for this. You can do this. And sometimes it's harder for people that haven't done that exact role before, right? But it takes your belief in you first.
And that is the value of the work, because through going through the modules, you are forced to do the reflection and to write out how have I handled employee relations issues before? What have I done? Like, one of my big fears, or I felt like it was a big weakness, was legal. And when I realized actually my time in the military there was a lot of legal compliance. It wasn't in the same way that it is in HR. I still have the foundation there that helps me to understand the importance of it and how to comply and, those things. And I had to learn, when I was in the military, we had to learn different. There were legal compliance issues. They were just slightly different than they are in HR, But I wouldn't have thought to make that connection. And that process helped me build my own belief in myself, so that when I was interviewing, it was, genuine. I believed I haven't done this exact thing, but I totally know I can. And this is why. This is how I know that I can do it, because I've done this thing similar before. And that was so powerful.
Oh, I love that so much. And those are the blind spots, right? When we sometimes are so worried about being asked a specific question, maybe in your case, like, tell me how you've handled legal compliance or employee relations. And you're sort of like, ooh, initially we often go to, I haven't done that before, right? And then that ruins that interview confidence and the momentum even to apply for that job sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But when you know how to translate the language, to your point, when you're pivoting into the same terms and draw an example that can truly showcase something similar or the most similar work that you've done and connect the dots for the person on the other end, you can go into that interview so differently. We are officially in the biggest hiring season of the year, January, and enrollment for HR Star is officially open. HR Star is my signature coaching program for HR professionals who want to land their next HR roles as soon as possible. And many do in as little as 3 weeks, up to 3 months. And the results are literally guaranteed, so that it's a no-brainer. When you hop into HR Star before doors close on February 2nd, you will be receiving $3,000 in bonuses, a bonus one-to-one coaching session, a full resume transformation, a custom pitch, and a live LinkedIn audit to match your new brand story. And I've opened up a 12-month payment plan option to make the decision a no-brainer. If you have been loving all of the testimonials that you are hearing and success stories from HR Star, then it is officially your turn to hop in. Spots are limited and doors close on February 2nd. Go grab your seat, and I cannot wait to support you. The link is in the show notes. What was the aha moment of like, I have done that in the military before. This is similar.
Well, the one I just shared actually about compliance, that was kind of a big aha moment for me, because I hadn't realized that there is a lot of compliance aspects in my past military experience. And I'm trying to think of, that was a big one, actually.
Were you asked about that in an interview? Because I know that was a fear that you might be asked, but were you actually asked the question?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Well,
was.
good.
And especially too, and one big part of my job now is doing investigations. And I had participated in the other organization I worked for. I had participated in some organization, but I never conducted one on my own. I wasn't in that role. And, I was upfront and honest about that. I've already done 2. That was my short time
Now
in this
you got
job.
it. You can add it to the resume now. Easy peasy.
Again, while I hadn't done that exact thing, the process and the experience and the appreciation for detail and neutrality that you need to bring to an HR investigation is, I have those skills, just not in the exact way. And I think that's I think your program helped me always ask the question, how have I done that? How have I done that? As opposed to, like you said, we default to, oh, I haven't done
I
that.
haven't done that.
I haven't. But how have you? Because you have in some way, even
Yes.
a little bit. And I love how you talk about, for people who are maybe just out of school or something, you still have that experience in some way. And your job is to find it and articulate it and let them decide
Yes,
whether
if
it's
it's
enough.
applicable. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. And what I found from asking like hundreds of people that exact question of like, after they say, I don't have this, can you help me explain to them I don't have it in a way that's like acceptable in an interview? Before we draft the I don't have it response, it's first like, I love to dig in. And what I find is you often do have something. And sometimes it's so related, but our brain blocks us by saying, nope, I don't have that, right?
Yeah.
And the more we believe it again, it's like the same message. The more we believe it, the more we can articulate it. And then the better it's received. And someone else can understand, okay, it might not be the exact same thing. You did it in a different environment, but that shows me you've done something similar before. I'm sure you could figure it out. Like you're a smart person. I'm sure you could figure it out. And now with AI and like we can get any information that we need so quickly. But are you the type of person that can figure it out? And if so, how can you prove that?
Yeah.
What stories can you bring to prove that?
Exactly. And be able to say it confidently. I mean, believe that about yourself. And that's the self-belief part of the process that is a little more, that is just a process, right? Working through that, I think, was for sure a process for me. I had to believe, yes, I've never done this job before. But the other thing, in going back through my experience, I realized I had taken many roles in the past of jobs that I had never done before.
Yes.
And just that recognition gave me confidence that this would be no different. I've done this multiple times before. In fact, I almost see it as a trend. It was a trend in my career history that I was kind of the first in a role. And I was, given that role because there was trust that I would figure it out and do it. And so,
and then you did.
And I did. Yes, absolutely.
So that's actually such a great mindset shift for someone listening who's also maybe pivoting. We're all doing something slightly different than we've ever done before. I'm doing new things every week. I know that for sure. And I'm questioning myself all the time. And it's like sometimes we just need our own record of success. Like one of my favorite things to do is like, especially with a new year, we're in that season. It's like looking at what have you done that you've never done before? And that will give you confidence to just give yourself the confidence to look at something in a more positive light. Like, although I've never done that, I'm sure I could figure it out because I've done hard things before. I've been in new roles before where I didn't know a thing about X or Y. And then within a month I did, right? I learned quickly. And looking back is often, it's such a great predictor of future success too, right? Like if you've done it before, why wouldn't you figure out this HR business partner role? Like, why not? You've done so much. Ooh, there's so many good things there. So what happened next? Tell me, fill me in.
That I think I wanted to bring up because from my experience, and this may resonate with some people, you're applying to jobs and a lot of times you don't either hear anything at all or you get, acceptance that we've received your application, we'll follow up. It's often hard to keep, to even track because sometimes the emails get lost in your email. And so there's such this void when you're applying for jobs that can be really hard,
We never leave the job search unscathed. I'm certain there's no one that's like applied for jobs that didn't get a level of rejection, even if they landed a role quickly.
Yes.
Right? There's so much rejection.
Yes. And that is really hard. Prior to joining your program, I had applied to one or two jobs and I did actually get an interview, which was amazing. When I look back, I was like, oh, wow, that was pretty amazing track record. I got kind of lucky. But after I joined the program, I was applying, I was tracking all my jobs on an Excel spreadsheet. And I think I want to say I was also finishing my certification. So I didn't with SHRM. So I didn't really focus on applying to jobs until I had taken a test and passed it, even though that was a little bit after I joined your program, but I was really focusing on finishing the certification. So I started applying and I think I want to say I had applied to like 45 jobs. I had only heard back from one and was invited to an interview. That was the job that I got.
Wow.
All the other jobs never even got an interview.
And it
So
just
it is
takes one.
possible to not hear, not get any interviews and still get a job. Like
Yes.
we kind of think that it's going to be like, oh, you're going to start getting, and I think it does happen for people too. They start getting some interviews and then, eventually they make it to the next round with several interviews. But for me, it was just one offer to an interview and that went all the way up to a job offer. So that's kind of a crazy, sort of a
That is
crazy.
rare. That is rare because often we're warming up in interviews. But I also could see something in you where it's like, if someone could just meet you and speak to you, they're going to love you. They're going to move you forward. And maybe you'll get it and maybe you don't in the end, depending on who you're up against or, what they're looking for and all of that. And it's like often the hardest part is just getting in front of the person to
Yeah.
even tell your story. And I
Yeah.
also knew the challenge would be the pivot and like being sensitive to that and being telling it in a way that will resonate and land once you do have that opportunity. So totally get the focus on getting your SHRM first so that you can confidently be like, yep, I have all of the designations, I have all the things. And what ended up happening through the interview process?
Yeah. So the interview process was really helpful that I felt prepared. And that also is where your program was so helpful because you give us questions to think about and prepare for at each level. And I love, and this is something I think also we don't think about when we're in the interview stage, we're so about ourselves and getting
Mhm.
the job, right? We just want to get the job and we're interested. What are the benefits or what is this? But it's about the employer. What do you bring to the table? And you really need to have that mindset shift. You need to be thinking, this is about them. How can I provide value to them?
Yes.
And that is not something I think we inherently go into an interview thinking. But if you can make that switch, that in and of itself is hugely powerful to any employer. When you are thinking already about them and how you can add value to them, or what are the things that they're struggling with? How can you how can you support them? That is huge. And I just would not have even thought that way,
I just wrote that down and it's so stupid because it's what I teach every day. But it's so obvious to me now that I teach it every day that I needed to write it down so I could put it in the book. So it's going in the book. But you're right. It's a
That
big
was
shift
huge.
that most people don't. It's human nature
It
to
is.
think
Absolutely.
I need this job because I need this title, because I need this paycheck, because it's close to my house, because I need the benefits, whatever those things are, which are all valid and 1,000% true. And yet, if we want to do really well in the interview process, we put that aside and we think, okay, if our goal is to really understand the organization so that we can interview in the best way possible, so that we can even have the opportunity to decide whether or not we want to work here down the line, if that is presented to us. Well, what do we need to do? Well, we need to make it all about the other side. Like, what are the issues that you have and how can I solve those issues for you? Because at the end of the day, the person sitting across the interview table from you is just wondering, can this person help me? Like I posted this role because I have a specific set of problems, or maybe one big problem, retention, engagement, whatever it is, or process. And it's like, can this person help me? Because that's the whole thing. And, if we apply this to anything, even in life, if we can go on a coffee date and make it about the other person, the other side always loves that, right? So even
And I
networking.
think that's what we do in HR too. I
Yes.
feel like the process of applying for an HR job also makes you a better HR professional because
Hmm.
that is part of our role. Like we have to keep the organization's needs in mind as well as the employees. And
Yes.
so that was, I think that mindset shift, I think was huge for me. And it's something I really like made sense to me. And I think probably was super powerful in the interview process.
I love it. Tell me about the role. I know you wanted the HRBP title. You got it. How quickly did that happen, by the way? And how many interviews were there? How did that all happen?
Okay. So, and that's pretty crazy too. So I had the first interview was over the phone and that went really well. I I think I asked some of the questions. I did ask some of the questions that you had suggested, are good questions to ask about, like, what would a person in this role should do in the first 90 days? Like, what is to be successful? What do you recommend, the person does in the first 90 days? And just trying to understand more about the role and the needs so that you can address that in the next interview. And that's another thing that, again, I would have never thought about. Every interview, you're wanting to learn more so that you can see and answer for the employer. This is how, the more you know about the role, you can answer the question for them, how you can help them in that role, right?
Yeah.
How are you the right person? And that forces you to think through that. I mean, I think that's a valuable process. So the first interview was over the phone. The second interview was with the hiring manager, who's now my manager. And that was also over the phone. And both of those I felt went really well. I mean, I felt good and comfortable in them. And because I had prepared and I was able to talk to my own experience because I know I'd thought about it and asked some good, useful questions. And then the final interview was in person. It was a panel interview. That was hard, actually.
It's intimidating to be in front of a group in person without any notes, just you sitting there vulnerable, right?
Absolutely. And I'm pretty at this stage in my life, I'm pretty comfortable in that type of setting, but they asked some hard questions. And I honestly came out of the interview and I thought to myself, I don't know how that went.
Oh,
So, and it was just, there were some hard questions, and the hiring manager said, we're going to make a decision pretty quick. I'll certainly let you know by the end of the week. And I want to say it was like a Tuesday. And I went home and I thought, okay, whatever happens, happens, and I was just really working on my mindset and just kind of letting
like if it's rejection like the other 44, no problem. I am ready. If it's an offer, great. Okay, good. I love that.
Yeah, I really did not know. But within an hour of getting home, I want to say it was within an hour, I got a phone call and they offered me the job.
Okay, such a good sign. What was your reaction to that?
I was shocked. I really was shocked. I didn't expect, I thought I would, they had been moving pretty quickly, but I thought I would for sure hear within a couple of days. I was not expecting, I had no idea, how many other candidates there were or any other details, but I was not expecting that quick of a turnaround. And then also, oh, by the way, can you start on Monday? and I said, absolutely. Because they wanted to do some training with the person that was leaving. And she was only going to be there for a short window. So, absolutely. And it has been just a fantastic organization. And I couldn't ask for better coworkers and a better manager. So I'm just really, really thankful of the whole process,
What's meant to be will be. And I love that you let go. I never could let go. When I was in final stages for interviews, I would ruminate and just picture my life in the role, which is literally something I want no one else to do. It's the worst advice, but it's just, I couldn't help it. I was like, well, I need a work outfit. What if I need to start on Monday? Like, what am I going to wear? And then getting rejected after feeling that way is really challenging.
That is something that I will say, having kind of what I've gone through in my life and with my husband and as a coach, that's something I've learned to do now in my life that I wouldn't have been able to do 10 years ago. So that is a newer skill, like kind of just letting go. I mean, I'm in the process of also buying a house, which is another one of those processes.
Oh, yes. What if you don't get it? What if there's another offer? I'm like,
yes. And I'm already moving in my mind. So
yeah, you're rearranging furniture at night, probably when you're trying to go to sleep. Like, of course.
So I can't say I'm like fantastic at it, but
I love
with the job, I think you really just have to believe, whatever your higher power is. And there's so much trust, I have learned to just put trust in that things will work out because it's all we can control. I mean, that's the other thing as a coach myself. You talk about this, like we have to focus on what we can control. And our part in it is preparing, looking at our own experience, being able to articulate how that relates to HR skills as best as we can. And then let the employer decide what's enough, what they're looking for, because often we have no idea. I mean, we
Yes.
might think we know and that we make judgments based on the job description, but we don't really know. So
We don't ever have the full picture. To your point, when you were in that final interview, they're like, well, you don't know who else is in the running and, who you're up against, or is there anyone else, or are there 10 people, or are there 2? And that's actually, I love that you tied it back to your biggest life lessons as well, in terms of like, it doesn't always turn out exactly like we wanted or at all like we wanted or expected, but all we can do is control how we react to it and what we do with that. And you've done some really beautiful things with the tough moments in your life. And that's all you can control.
Yeah. I think that's, if there's one thing I could boil my coaching down to, it really comes back to that. We can so easily get lost in our lives focusing on the things outside of us. I mean, right now in the United States, that could easily be politics.
Mm-hmm.
It can be our partner's, illness. It could be our children who are doing XYZ. And anytime we're focused outside of us on all the things that are outside of us, those are all things that we can't control, and we will feel powerless when they're not going the way we want them to. And we just do that by human nature. So you always have to bring it back to, okay, what do I have control over? Well,
yes,
control over, what steps I take, my mood a lot of times, like how I'm going through the day, how I treat other people.
yes,
And again, another thing in the program you talked about, like your learning plan. I think that was another great idea too, for things that you feel you have a gap in, start learning. We have so many free resources.
we can learn anything right now for free a lot of the time, right?
Anything. Yes, for free or for
YouTube.
very little money. And even if it's not a certification or anything, it still builds your confidence, because
Yes.
that's something that puts you back in control. I'm taking active control to improve my knowledge in this area. And that is a
Yes.
powerful place to be. And when we can interview from that place of feeling like, hey, I might not have this exact experience, but these are the things I'm doing to put myself in the best possible light and, set myself up as a strong candidate, that's powerful.
Yes. And so many people, you mentioned politics, and there's a lot of people that will dwell on what's happening in the world or even in this job market. And they look at the unemployment rates or the amounts of people that are being let go from their organizations, or they're hearing, of course, they're going to hear these things. And some people will be saying very negative things like, you'll never find a job in this market. Like, you'll never pivot into a new role. Like, they have so many options right now. And like, you could choose to either believe that, or you can take action.
Yep.
Just like you, Marika, thank you so much for coming. There were so many amazing insights. I'm just wishing you so much luck in this new chapter. And thank you so much for coming on and celebrating with me.
Thank you so much for having me, and also just for doing what you do.
We are officially in the biggest hiring season of the year, January, and enrollment for HR Star is officially open. HR Star is my signature coaching program for HR professionals who want to land their next HR roles as soon as possible. And many do in as little as 3 weeks, up to 3 months. And the results are literally guaranteed, so that it's a no-brainer. When you hop into HR Star before doors close on February 2nd, you will be receiving $3,000 in bonuses, a bonus one-to-one coaching session, a full resume transformation, a custom pitch, and a live LinkedIn audit to match your new brand story. And I've opened up a 12-month payment plan option to make the decision a no-brainer. If you have been loving all of the testimonials that you are hearing and success stories from HR Star, then it is officially your turn to hop in. Spots are limited and doors close on February 2nd. Go grab your seat, and I cannot wait to support you. The link is in the show notes. Hey, before you go, if you've enjoyed listening to today's show, I would love your support. Please take a moment to leave a review anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And here's the exciting part. I'm running a special contest and giving away a one-on-one session with yours truly. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and send it to me in my DMs. All of my contact info is in the show notes. I appreciate you so much, and I cannot wait to build the career and life that you've been craving together. See you next week.